Many years ago, in the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a man named Kenneth, but everybody called him Ken because Lagos people hated pronouncing full names unless there was money involved. Ken lived in a face me I face you compound in Surulere with his wife Ebere and their 6-year-old daughter Kamsi. The compound had 9 rooms that faced each other like contestants in a beauty pageant, 2 bedrooms that everybody fought for every morning, a corridor that held more secrets than the federal secretariat, and the landlady who appeared without notice like tax officers. Ken worked in a microfinance office on the island, and every morning he wore his tie like someone preparing for a battle. He was not naturally wicked or careless. He was just simply a man who believed that as long as he paid school fees and provided for his home, the rest should sort itself. Ebere was in her late 20s. She sold Ankara fabrics part-time and managed the home like a small government. Their marriage looked stable from the outside, but inside it had episodes. Ken forgot birthdays. Ebere forgot to cook sometimes. The electricity bill annoyed everybody and Kamsi asked too many questions. Yet, they loved each other stubbornly because they believed good marriages were not perfect but maintained. Now, here was where the matter entered complication. Ken had a secret life that nobody in the compound suspected. This secret life was a young woman named Tinuola, who called herself Tinu as short names made her feel like expensive perfume. Tinu was 25 years old. She worked as a customer service representative for a skincare brand, and she lived her life as if she was the main character of a Nollywood series. She believed that if a man bought shawarma for her 2 times, it meant destiny was knocking. Ebere had no idea that a girl existed somewhere in the background stretching her neck into her marriage. The neighbors too had no idea because Mr. Ken carried himself like a devoted church usher. Even the landlady respected him because she once saw him sweeping the corridor during compound cleanup without being reminded. Unfortunately, the problem started one afternoon when Tinu discovered that Ken lived in a face me I face you compound. She had always imagined him living in the type of apartment that had scented candles and throw pillows that spelled dream and love. But when she saw the compound with clothes hanging like decoration and children running around with naked stomachs, she blinked twice. She asked him on the phone that day, "Ken, is this really where you stay or is it your old house?" Kenny sighed and said, "Tinu, please don't start today. It is temporary. I am working on something bigger." Tinu replied, "Better, because I cannot be associating with small life." After that call, she sat on her bed scrolling through her phone when she saw an advert on Facebook Marketplace that showed room for rent in Surulere, good water, serious tenants only. Her eyes became bright like a taxi headlamp at night. She clicked on the post and almost screamed when she saw the compound gates. It was the same compound Ken lived in. Immediately, a dangerous idea entered her head. If she could not wait for Ken to upgrade, then she could bring herself closer to his situation. She believed Ken was only still loyal to his wife because they lived together. So, if she lived close enough, maybe things would change. She contacted the landlady immediately. "Good afternoon, ma. I saw the advert. I am interested in the room." The landlady replied with speed, "Are you a student or a worker?" Tinu said, "Worker, ma. Quiet worker. I sew clothes." The landlady said, "Tailor is good. You people don't owe rent. Come tomorrow with your money." The next day, Tinu arrived in a taxi with a polka dot dress, a small handbag, and the confidence of someone who knew her destiny was loading. The landlady inspected her ID, collected her money, and handed her the key. Nobody knew that a ticking bomb in wig and lipstick had just joined the compound. And then the shock happened 5 days later on a dusty Thursday evening. Ebere was cooking jollof rice in the corridor while talking with Mama Uju about the rising price of tomatoes when Ken returned from work dragging his tie like a tired animal. Just then, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Hi, baby." He froze like iced fish, turned slowly and saw Tinu dragging a big Ghana must-go bag across the corridor. His brain refused to boost. He whispered, "Tinu, what are you doing here?" Tinu smiled like someone at a wedding reception. "I am moving in. Surprise!" Ken whispered with fear. "Surprise what? Are you mad?" Tinu winked. "Relax. I already paid my rent. I now live here." Ebere turned her head because she heard voices that sounded suspicious. "Who is that, Ken? Do you know the new neighbor?" Ken opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out because his brain was still shocked. The day after the shocking surprise arrival of Tinu, the compound woke up with new fuel for gossip because nothing excited face me I face you tenants like fresh scandal. Before the sun even climbed properly, Mama Uju was already plaiting her daughter's hair in the corridor while whispering to Anita, the neighbor from room 2. "That new girl that moved in yesterday is too bold. Someone said she called Kenneth's baby outside in the open. Is she mad?" Anita replied sharply because she too loved violence. "She's not mad though, she's possessed. Who moves into the same compound as a married man? Is she practicing science?" Ebere pretended not to hear them, but her eyes were sharp. She stirred the pap for Kamsi quietly while observing the new situation like a detective with no uniform. Kamsi sat on the small stool drinking her pap and asking questions that children like to ask when adults were tense. "Mommy, who is the new auntie?" Ebere replied, "She's a new tenant." Kamsi said, "She smells nice. She greeted daddy 2 times yesterday night." Ebere blinked slowly because children always revealed things unintentionally. Meanwhile, inside her new room, Tinu was unpacking her bag with the confidence of someone who came to conquer her territory. She hung her ring light by the window, placed her perfume bottles on a tray and said to herself, "By December, I will not be Auntie Tinu, I will be Madam Tinu." Then she smiled at the mirror like a villain in a cartoon. As for Ken, he was still shaking from the previous night. He sat on the edge of his bed, tapping his foot on the floor while Ebere folded clothes. He cleared his throat about 5 times before finally speaking. "Babe, that girl that moved in yesterday, I know her from outside." Ebere paused with a blouse in her hand. "Outside where?" Ken scratched his head and said, "Just outside. You know outside now." Ebere looked at him slowly. "So the girl sees you outside as what?" Ken swallowed spit because his brain lacked data. "As a customer." Ebere raised her eyebrow. "So, what did you buy from her?" Ken said, Nothing major, just small skincare cream." Ebere stared at him for 2 more seconds, then folded her clothes silently. In marriage, silence speaks louder than horsepower. Outside the compound, the landlady walked in carrying tomatoes inside a black nylon. The compound children greeted her loudly because children respected tomatoes more than uncles. Mama Uju rushed to her and said, "Nne, sorry to disturb you, but this new girl you rented room to is somehow." The landlady frowned because she herself loved gist. "Somehow how?" Mama Uju adjusted her wrapper and began. "She was greeting Kenny like a lover yesterday." The landlady snapped her fingers. "I did not involve myself in adult greeting. Once rent is complete, I mind my business." Afternoon came with more suspicion because Tinu started her operations. She timed her bedroom visits perfectly so that Ken would always see her passing in towel or small wrapper. She would pass and say loudly, "Good morning, sir." Ken would respond with confusion, "Good afternoon, Tinu." Then Tinu would smile like a banana seller with excess profits. "Hope madam is treating you well. You look stressed." On one particular evening, Ebere came out to wash plates near the tap and saw Tinu leaning on the corridor railing talking on the phone. Tinu spoke with excitement. He has not told her yet, but he will. He's just waiting for the right moment. Ebere slowed her washing because her ears were hot. She looked at Tinu, but Tinu pretended not to notice. Ebere carried her plates inside quietly without making noise because she was still connecting the dots. Later that night, when Ken came home, Ebere asked him casually, "Do you know that new girl very well?" Ken said with confidence, "Not really, oh. I already told you now. She's just a familiar face." Ebere nodded and then asked, "So, how did she know our compound?" Ken panicked inside because that question was not in his syllabus. He laughed uncomfortably and said, "Lagos is small now. People know places." Ebere smiled small, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Meanwhile, the Compound Gossip Council had graduated into full investigation. Mama Uju stood with Anita and Mr. Oga near the tap. Mr. Oga was the man who liked giving commentary without permission. This is how it starts. So today she moves into the compound. Tomorrow she will be cooking soup for the man. Anita snapped her fingers. Just watch. That woman's husband is already shaking like Gary inside hot water. Mama Uju hissed, "If the wife keeps quiet, I will not keep quiet. Oh, I hate nonsense. I will fight for her." Mr. Oga laughed. "You love nonsense. That is why you are talking." Tinu noticed all the eyes on her, but instead of shame, she started smiling more. She believed pressure was part of strategy. She greeted everybody with extra sweetness. "Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma. How is the family?" But the neighbors greeted her with suspicion because Nigerians trusted mosquitoes more than strangers. By the end of the week, Ebere had seen enough signs to activate alert mode. She watched how Ken swallowed spit anytime Tinu passed. She watched how Tinu smiled too deeply. She watched how neighbors whispered. She watched how the compound energy changed. And something inside her chest told her that this new tenant came with a mission. But she did not shout or drag. She did not call a family meeting yet. She decided to watch closely because wise women studied the battlefield before selecting their weapon. Unfortunately for Ken, while he was sweating inside his soul, Tinu was busy executing plans she believed were strategic, as she thought she was in a romantic war movie instead of Face Me, I Face You compound. And then the battle started one Saturday morning during environmental sanitation. Everybody was sweeping in front of their doors because the landlady hated dirty corridors. Ebere had tied her scarf and brought out her broom, while little Kamsi followed behind, dragging a small broom that was not doing anything useful except for making her feel important. Tinu came out in small shorts and big t-shirts with lip gloss on her lips and Bluetooth speaker in her pocket, playing soft music that sounded like perfume adverts. She greeted loudly, "Good morning, my neighbors." Her voice traveled through the corridor like a radio broadcast. Only a few neighbors replied because they were busy monitoring facial expressions. Then she looked at Ken, who was sweeping without enthusiasm, and said, "Kenny darling, hold on, let me get hand gloves for you. Your hands are too soft for this work." That sentence entered the corridor like thunder. Ebere paused with her sweeping. Mama Uju dropped her dustpan. Mr. Oga whispered, "You see what I was saying?" Ken panicked because he was married, not kidnapped. He waved his broom and muttered, No, I am fine. Please continue your thing." Tinu laughed softly with full confidence. "No need to form. I know you." Then she walked inside her room, leaving a trail of suspense behind her. Ebere stared at Ken for 2 seconds. "She knows you how." Ken swallowed air because saliva refused to come out. "Marketing. She used to sell cream to me," Ebere replied. "Interesting. Marketing." Then she continued sweeping faster than before. And you know, when a woman swept like that, it means her brain was sweeping too. Later that same day, Tinu brought out a plate of jollof spaghetti with chicken and placed it on a tray. The smell traveled through the compound like an invitation letter. She walked to Ken's door and knocked. "Kenny, your lunch." Ken opened the door halfway and whispered, "Are you crazy? What is this for?" Tinu smiled. "To help you. Your wife traveled today, so you need food." But Ebere was not far. She stepped out from the bedroom corridor holding a bucket and said in a calm voice that carried tension, "I traveled where?" Tinu froze and Ken entered coma mode. The neighbors pretended to mind their business, but their ears were shaking like antennas. Tinu suddenly laughed. "Oh, sorry, I thought you went somewhere. I did not see you since morning." Ebere stared at her without blinking. "I went nowhere. My husband has food. Take your food outside." Tinu smiled politely, but her eyes were throwing insults. She carried the plates back into her room. Once the door closed, the compound exploded quietly with gossip. Mama Uju whispered to Anita, "That girl is an evil spirit. She wants to feed the man into hypnosis." Anita nodded. "If the man eats that spaghetti, he will sign documents against his will." Mr. Oga carried his stool closer and said, "Leave food matter. Did you hear her calling him darling in front of the wife? That girl is a witch, Jezebel." The tiny corridor had now become a stadium for spectators. Meanwhile, Ken was sitting on the bed holding his hand because both women were dragging him without even touching him. He tried to beg Ebere later, "Babe, I promise you nothing is happening. She's just been friendly." Ebere looked at him with a kind of calm that frightened grown men. She said, "Be careful with friendly people. Lucifer was also friendly in the garden, remember." The full wall officially kicked off 3 days later when Tinu started gifting Kamsi small toys and biscuits. Children loved snacks, so Kamsi began greeting Tinu with joy. One evening, she burst into the room and said, "Daddy, I saw Auntie Tinu with pink nails. She said she will soon be our family." Ken coughed so hard that he almost saw stars. Ebere stopped folding the clothes slowly and stared at her daughter. She said, "What?" Kamsi repeated innocently. "She said she will be our family. She gave me biscuits too." Ebere closed her eyes because women processed pain better like a slow computer. That night, when Kamsi slept, Ebere faced Ken. So now she's telling the child she will be family. Ken paced the room like a rat inside a bucket. "I did not tell her that. I swear on my father's retirement letter," Ebere said. "Then what is she planning?" Ken whispered. "I don't know." Ebere replied, "But she calls you darling outside." Ken muttered, "She does not respect boundaries." Ebere laughed without joy. "And you, do you respect boundaries?" Ken kept quiet because silence does not lie. By the following week, the compound had started keeping records like journalists. Every move Tinu made became a headline. Every sigh Ebere released became an analysis, and Ken now lived like someone walking inside a minefield. The landlady visited one evening to collect water levy, and even she paused when she saw Tinu sitting near Ken's door with a short skirt. She called Ebere aside and asked, "Why is that girl sitting there?" Ebere said, "Ask your tenants." The landlady frowned because she smelled scandal. She went to Tinu and asked, "Young lady, where do you know Kenneth from?" Tinu smiled and said, "We are close." The landlady narrowed her eyes. "Close how?" Tinu replied, "Close enough." The neighbors that heard that sentence almost screamed, "Chai!" That night, after the drama ended, Ebere lay on her bed with her eyes open. Ken pretended to sleep, but he was awake. While Tinu sat by her window scrolling through pictures of Ken on her phone while smiling like someone who already won. She whispered to herself, "I will not be a side chick forever. I will soon be the wife. She will leave. I will stay." And then everything collapsed one sunny Saturday morning during the general compound cleanup. The landlord had warned everybody a week before that environmental officers would soon visit, so the landlady activated her military mode. By 8 a.m., the corridor was filled with people brushing gutter, sweeping dust, dragging buckets, washing veranda, and shouting instructions. Tinu came out later wearing a small leggings and a crop top as if she was going to morning gym and not compound sanitation. She held a small broom lazily and kept glancing at Ken, who was dragging a heavy dustpan. Ebere was mopping her frontage quietly with her slippers, making that wet squeaky sound that always signaled silent anger. The gossip council was also present. Mama Uju, Anita, and Mr. Oga. They were sweeping and collecting information at the same time. Just then, trouble started when Mama Uju asked loudly with zero filter, "Ken, do you want to come forward to sweep this part, or will your new wife help you today?" The broom paused in almost every hand. Ebere stopped mobbing. Ken turned into a stone. Tinu blinked twice, then smiled slowly because she thought it was an opportunity instead of a trap. Tinu said with small pride in her voice, "Don't worry, ma, I can help my man." Ebere spoke before anybody inhaled. "Your what?" Tinu faced her boldly. "My man. He will soon make it official, so no need to fight." The compound erupted with noise like a generator explosion. "Ah, eh? Say what?" Ken raised his hands. "Everybody calm down. Nobody is making anything official. Please, nobody should listen to her." Tinu laughed without shame. "So, you want to deny me after everything?" Ebere folded her mop slowly and looked straight at Tinu. "Deny what exactly?" Tinu turned to the crowd because public attention gave her confidence. "Me and Kenneth are together. He told me he would chase his wife away and marry me. He even told me to be close, so I moved here." The landlady who had just entered from the gate paused like a freeze frame. "Moved where?" Tinu replied, "Into your compound, ma." The landlady shouted, "Into my compound for what?" Tinu replied, "For love." The landlady put both hands on her head. "Love will finish you people in this Lagos." Ken tried to talk, but Ebere raised her hand at him with dignity. "No, let her finish." Tinu continued, "He calls me darling every day. He eats my food. He promised me December wedding. He said I should not worry about his wife because she's just temporary." The neighbors gasped like football spectators watching a penalty. Mama Uju shouted, "December wedding where? Inside this compound?" Mr. Oga added, "This is why we must install CCTV." Ken shoved his broom aside and shouted, "She's lying. I never said that." Tinu pulled out her phone with confidence and said, "So, why do you chat me every night? Why do you call me princess? Why do you say you are tired of your wife?" "Tired of your wife?" The compound screamed again. "Chai! Madness! Ebere, sorry oh!" Ebere walked inside the room slowly and the corridor became silent because nobody knew if she went to carry a knife or a Bible. Minutes later, she returned holding printed A4 papers and a small envelope. She placed them on a chair in the middle like evidence material. "Since there is a court sitting in this corridor, let us judge well. These are screenshots I printed from his phone. I saw them 2 nights ago. I did not speak because I wanted to see his next move." The neighbors rushed closer because evidence gave life to gossip. The papers showed chats of Ken calling Tinu sweet names and Tinu sending pictures. One neighbor covered her mouth. "Oh God, these children of nowadays." The landlady slapped her own thigh. "Kenneth, so you used to text like this in my compound?" Ken stuttered. I was foolish. I am sorry." The landlady faced Tinu. "But you want to scatter a family. You have no fear oh." Tinu hissed. "He says he loves me. Ask him." Ebere looked at Ken. "Do you love her?" Ken whispered, "No, never. I was foolish. I just wanted the attention. I did not want to marry her. I was just playing." The neighbor screamed, "Play with another person's destiny. Men will not kill us." Kai! Tinu's face cracked. Her confidence melted and her lips trembled. "Ken, so you used me?" Ken replied, "Nobody sent you to move into this compound oh." Tinu shouted, "I moved in because you were slow. I wanted to be the wife." Ebere shook her head slowly. "You cannot force marriage. Marriage is not a vacancy. You cannot apply by relocation." The landlady interrupted for peace sake. "Young woman, you must pack out. I do not allow madness inside my property. I don't want police later. I don't want curses. I don't want fights. Pack out quietly before the landlord arrives. Tinu grabbed her phone and stormed into her room. The neighbors gathered in clusters discussing what they just witnessed. One neighbor said, "This is why I don't like silence in compounds. Silence hides nonsense." By evening, Tinu came out to throw dirt in the dustbin. She wore a big hoodie and glasses as if paparazzi were following her. The children playing football pointed at her and whispered loudly, "That is the auntie that wanted to chase daddy's wife." Tinu almost evaporated from shame. Inside Ken's room, Ebere cried for the first time since the drama began, while Ken sat beside her like a man waiting for sentence. "I am sorry, I swear, I don't want her. I don't want any other woman." Ebere wiped her tears and said, "Then stop acting like a single man." That night, the compound whispered until midnight because the drama was too sweet to sleep early. Even Mr. Oga, who hated WhatsApp, finally updated his status. Fear side chick, respect wife, love God. By the next morning, Tinu was inside her room packing her bags quietly while the landlord supervised the packing like a customs officer. "Carry your ring lights, carry your blender, carry your rug. Don't leave anything that will remind me of heartbreak." Tinu dragged her boxes past the corridor without greeting anybody and entered a taxi. No neighbor waved at her or said farewell prayer for her. Now, the spotlight moved to Ken because compound people loved sequel. He came outside that morning to greet the neighbors, but they scattered like chickens avoiding rain because greeting was not enough after emotional traffic. Mama Uju looked at him and shook her head slowly. "So, you had office wife and compound wife. Why are men like this?" Ken sighed because no explanation could save him at this point. He went inside quietly. Inside the house, Ebere had started her own shege ministry. She no longer cooked 2 plates of food. She now cooked 1 plate for herself and Kamsi. Ken would smell delicious stew from the sitting room while eating dry bread with water in the bedroom. One evening, Ken asked her politely, "Babe, can I have small rice?" Ebere replied without turning, "Ask your skincare girlfriend. She cooks very well." Ebere also suspended all bedroom privileges like NEPA lights. Ken now slept near the wall with a pillow barrier between them. He tried to touch her shoulder one night, but she shrugged it off and said, "Do not touch me. I am allergic to betrayal." When their relatives called to ask how she was doing, Ebere answered the call on speaker so that Ken could hear every single syllable. "I am fine. I am dealing with a temporary husband. God will deliver me." Oh. She also implemented the famous married women silent treatment. Not abusive silence, but strategic silence. She answered his questions with yes, no, maybe, and If Ken asked, "Do you want tea?" she replied, "Yes." If he asked, "With sugar?" she replied, "Yes." But when he brought the tea, Ebere would look at the tea and say, "Who asked you to add sugar?" Ken would blink because even communication exam was not this tough. The part that really pained him was on one Sunday. Ebere had dressed beautifully and confidently for church service with a gele that could open a bakery, while Ken wore his normal shirt and tried to walk beside her. But she walked ahead slowly and gracefully like a widow that had no husband. When they reached, the church ushers greeted Ebere warmly and respectfully. Then they asked Ken, "Sir, are you new here?" Ebere did not correct them. Ken almost fainted. At home, Kamsi even joined the ministry unknowingly. One evening, she asked her father, "Daddy, have you finished greeting that auntie? Are you ready to be a daddy again?" Ken covered his face and cried. So, even his own child was now giving him shege. For 2 months, Ken wore the badge of a changed man. He cleaned the house, washed plates, did school runs, bought vegetables, and even learned how to make fish stew from YouTube. The neighbors watched him peel beans one Saturday morning and congratulated him for turning into a responsible man. Mr. Oga said, "This is why disgrace is important in marriage. It resets husbands' brains." Finally, Ebere decided it was time to talk because the distance was not for eternity. It was only for reset. She called Ken to sit in the living room and said, "You embarrassed me. You exposed our marriage to strangers. You united the compound against me. You fed a stranger with promises and you expected me to continue as if nothing happened. If I forgive you today, you will repeat it tomorrow. So listen very well. There are conditions." Ken nodded so fast that his head almost removed. "I agree already." Ebere raised her hand. "Wait, don't agree before you hear. Condition 1, there will be no female friend that I do not know about. If you want to greet a woman, greet her with both hands in your pockets and eyes facing heaven. Condition 2, no secrets on your phone. If your phone rings at night, I will answer it. Condition 3, you will go for marriage counseling, whether you like it or not. We will talk to someone wiser than us because I am tired of using intuition to solve a grown man's problem." Ken said, "I accept all. Add more if you like." Ebere replied, "Good. Now we can start healing." Slowly, through accountability and humility, Ebere learned to forgive Ken. The compound noticed the change and reduced their gossip slowly since peace had returned. One evening, when rain was falling and Kamsi was drawing on the floor, Ebere sat beside Ken and leaned on his shoulder for the first time in a long while. Ken froze in surprise. "Is this forgiveness?" Ebere smiled small and said, "This is attempt. Work with it." By December, their marriage was no longer bleeding. They cooked together, went to counseling, and laughed sometimes like old friends. The compound respected them again. Even the landlady smiled and said, "Marriage is not a smooth road. Sometimes it is downfall ride. Sometimes it is Uber. You people have entered Uber again. Thank God." As for Tinu, she relocated to Ikorodu where shame did not follow her. But rumor has it that she is still looking for a husband with ring lights, but nobody had verified it. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comments section. Give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.